Hello, I'm here with Danielle Lawrence, and she is going to share her COVID experience. This is the third time we've restarted the video, so I'm feeling a little canned, but just to do a brief introduction, she is an artist, professor at SFAI, and San Francisco resident, as well as a Minnesota Street Project resident. And I guess, Danielle, thank you so much for being here. And maybe you could just say a little bit about your living situation, like where you're located and what the kind of COVID quarantine vibes are like where you are.
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to see you. I'm so excited that we get to connect because you're down in Mexico.
This is true.
Um, the wonderful world of technology.
Yeah. Just hoping it works.
What's my COVID experience? Yeah, I live in Lower Haight in San Francisco, like Haight and Fillmore area, which is typically very noisy, a lot of activity happening. There's lots of bars and restaurants, and just it's a spot where people come, for various activities, and lots of record stores. And yeah, it's pretty quiet these days. Even my neighbors are pretty chill. Nothing major, no parties.
You're like in an apartment with your husband, is that right?
With my partner, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, it's basically one big room.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe two big rooms. Yeah, it's
You guys
but there's
have far to
not
go.
a lot of doors.
Okay.
There's a door to the bathroom. That's about it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So it's kind of like, like those old school lofts in New York, like where everybody just has like a corner for their bed, but it's just the two of us. So that's good. Yeah.
yeah, better than quarantining alone, I think.
Totally. I know. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, I actually am not here by myself right now, so that's cool. I have one other resident here with me, and then before that, it was three of us. So,
Mm.
and then before that, I was by myself, so it's kind of nice having people down and then get to like make dinners and do all
Yeah,
that
you
good
just
stuff.
bounce off of each other instead
Yeah,
of
it's the reason I came
bouncing
to
off of
residency.
yourself. Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, right on. I'm glad that there's people around that you get to
Yeah.
communicate with. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so you're like right by Golden Gate Park. You're saying it's open?
It is,
Okay.
but not to cars, to people
Yeah.
and, bicyclists and stuff.
Oh, that's cool. So you're
But
blocked
yeah,
off.
definitely. Yeah, everything's blocked off. I mean, but people, I don't know, like some people wear masks, some people don't. Some people think it's a hoax, some people think it's real. Everybody's having their own unique experience and reaction. Um, but yeah, definitely like that 6 foot rule is not necessary. Like people aren't, I mean, there's a lot of people are trying, and then there's people that are just like, whatever.
Yeah. I had someone brush my hand yesterday that she was walking so close to me and she was on the phone and her mask was like pulled down to her chin. And she like cut me off on the sidewalk and I was like, you just touched me. Like that is the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing here.
Like I need to bring an umbrella around
You
and
know,
just like open it, like when people get like too close.
they look the
I'm
same
like,
as
no,
me.
no, this is 6 feet. Just like open it. It's like, the penguin in, Batman.
Totally. And it like
Like,
turns
that'd
into
be
a,
my new trick.
I don't want it to turn into a weapon exactly, but just something a
No,
little more,
like a buffer.
yeah,
Yeah,
distancy.
a visual buffer.
Yeah. So what is your day to day like? Like, what was your day to day like before, and what are you doing now?
Oh, good question. Before, like I'm real like go getter, I like to have a lot of activity in my life. Yeah, I lead a pretty packed life, between teaching and being an artist, having a twin career, so to speak.
So you would be teaching during the day, like at the
Yeah,
school.
typically I would teach during the day, and you know, typically you're classes meet twice a week. I'm only teaching one class this semester, which I feel lucky, and it's only on one day. I'm
Mm,
only doing a couple like individual studies, directed studies,
that's
and
cool.
it's not a studio class. So I kind of lucked out
Mm,
that I'm teaching a seminar class. But typically, my day would like wake up early, do emails, exercise, go to the studio or teach, and
right.
then come home, eat dinner, and go to bed and do it over again.
Yeah.
And I do come into contact in under normal circumstances with a lot of different kinds of people in a lot of different environments. And I realize that, now, like how important that social activity is,
Like, you
and how
even
much I do
realize
rely.
it.
Yeah, that I do appreciate and rely on it. Whether it's just bumping into you at the studio space and talking for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
those interactions are extraordinarily important in my life. So now, what am I doing now? I'm a little like walking in molasses. I don't really have. I mean, I schedule my time, but I don't actually adhere to my schedule.
That sounds familiar, I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm been taking like 2 walks a day and also doing yoga.
Oh, cool.
Friend Reza has, if you guys want, Reza uh, on Instagram, Reza Abrahimi, EBRA. He has a donation-based yoga class that he's doing, and you can find him on Instagram too.
Cool.
Um, yeah, so
I
I
do
do that
an
with him.
Instagram live dance
Yeah.
class with Ryan Heffington.
Oh,
Thing. Basically, he does a live video and then just bops around his studio for like an hour. It's really
that's
fun.
awesome. Send me the link. I'll do it with you.
I will, yeah. Um, so yeah, I want to talk about your solo show, but so basically a short story. You had a solo show set to open March 14th, and so
Yep.
you were probably working super hard, like frenzy up until then. And
Yep.
then quarantine hit the 16th, and it's like I think it's normal to go through a period of like relaxation slash like exhaustion slash burnout. Like once your show opens, you're kind of like lose motivation a little bit.
Yep.
But I'm curious like how that was like either exacerbated or what happened, because then all of a sudden you were like, oh, things are changing right
Well, it's been, I mean, I was excited that, so we didn't have an opening. So the reception was
now.
canceled.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and because of social distancing. And so what we did is at the time, to the best of our knowledge of what was, information was coming out and regulations at that moment was, um, they hadn't closed anything down yet, but we extended, like we opened, but we didn't have a reception. There was no food, no wine. And we extended the hours during the day. So like people kind of barely trickled in. I would say it was a very, very slow trickle, just because it was a pandemic.
Then,
So, a handful of
post
people
pandemic.
came, yeah, and saw it, and that was cool. And then as like the reality sinks in, I don't know. I've had mixed emotions about it. On the one hand, I'm safe in my home. I'm healthy. I have food to eat. I'm on unemployment like everybody else. It's like it recalibrates it just recalibrates your priorities, and art is always important and creativity is always going to be there for me, but at the end of the day, I'd much rather people be safe uh, than go see my paintings.
Yeah, right. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm wondering like, because all of a sudden you were like given this excuse to sit around at home after your show, which I know for me, when I'm done like preparing a body of work, like, did you feel that like crash, or were you kind of like so busy recalibrating all the new information that you were like oh, I got to do this and figure that out? Because you were kind of
No,
saying like you're feeling
I
like
was actually pretty calm about it. I
yeah.
didn't get upset. I was like, I was actually very calm about it. And even, you know, the gallerist Katrina was like, yeah, I told her, I was like, I'm so excited that, not excited, but I'm grateful and happy that and satisfied that I'm with you during this time. And she was like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, you're remaining more calm than I am. And I don't know. It's weird. It's like every time you do have like this opportunity where you push yourself, you know, like to the extreme, whether it's physically, emotionally, financially, to put on the show, and it's this big, you know, exertion of all of that activity, there is a deflation that happens afterwards, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And usually I'm like, oh, well, now what? And it takes me a couple of weeks to bounce back.
Yeah.
This time I was just like, I didn't have that because all expectations were taken away.
Hmm.
There weren't that, you know, like I couldn't have any expectations because everybody was stuck at home. And so in a way, it allowed me to be more chill about it than I would normally be.
Hmm. Could you maybe give us like an elevator pitch of your work? And I was thinking if we wanted, we could like share my screen when I look at your website.
Oh yeah.
Would you want to do that? Or if you want to pull it up, if it's easier for you to like kind of
Yeah.
scroll through?
Or you know, there was an interview that just happened in Squarespace or Square Cylinder, sorry, Square Cylinder. Dr. Stephanie Hanner and I had a conversation at a virtual walkthrough, and then David Roth was kind enough to put that up on Square Cylinder. But just a brief
So
run through.
people can kind of go to that and like learn more.
Yeah, totally. Or Trawick Contemporary or me, DanielleLawrence.com. What was I going to say? A quick synopsis of my work is, you know, I've been working kind of as an experimental artist within the realm of painting. And so in the last 10 years, I've been really interested in the potential of painting as a shapeshifter. So breaking down what painting is, what it can be. So typically we think about painting as stretcher bar, canvas, paint itself. And if you use that as an equation and you're constantly changing up those different areas, you know, like what happens when paint becomes a dimensional element in itself and can speak for itself, and it doesn't need the canvas, it doesn't need the stretcher. And so in this body of work, it's just a different reiteration, so it's a different organization of those elements, using paint as dye, and also looking to like craft, like sewing, and ceramics, and taking apart the canvas and then sewing it back together. So there's almost like quilting that's happening. So yeah, that's what I was up to in this last body of work, which was really exciting. It's because of the golden residency I had last summer. They're so awesome. They give you this big studio in the middle of New York State in this beautiful countryside and just tons of paint. And you get to, you know, experiment and do wacky stuff.
Yeah, I actually applied and didn't get in last year. I
Ah,
know. So I was kind of bummed because I'm like, I want a bunch of oil paint. Like I know that they have like every color.
well, they own Williamsburg now.
Yeah. So definitely will be applying one time in the future. But
Put
that's
me,
cool. And
put me
then
as
is
a
that,
reference.
oh, say that again.
Said, put me as a reference, Sarah. Because,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Everybody note that. Put Danielle Lawrence as a reference.
No, it's just for you, Sarah, not for
Okay.
everybody
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
But I was gonna say, so did you kind of get into like the dyeing there, or was it something that
I
you had already
did.
started?
Yeah. So I was really interested in kind of this quasi shibori tie dye. So it's pre tie dye. So like, you know, all the hippies, where did they appropriate that from?
Mhm.
And it's a Japanese technique where you fold and then pinch the fabric with, you know, either string or like wooden blocks to create a resist.
Mhm.
And then you water down your acrylic and you're actually using, you know, acrylic paint as dye. And I get to wash it and I get to stain it, and it's a real organic process. You know, I was able to like do these huge pieces out on their lawn and use like a hose and, you know, really get messy.
Yeah.
Whereas Minnesota Street project, we could do that. Absolutely. It's just different when you don't have shoes on and you're in the middle of like a gigantic lawn and no
Kind of
one's
gets you
watching.
more into like the mood of the hippie
Yeah. Hmm.
vibe. Um, for you, like, what is it about that kind of use of materials that kind of spoke to you, and like this kind of throwback to these like kind of 70s aesthetic in a way, which I don't know if like all craft feels 70s, but for sure this body of work kind of makes
Yeah.
you think of that.
Well, it's a lot of different things kind of coming together. First, I would say like a lot of my research for my classes tends to, I'm really interested in late 60s and early 70s. So when you have people who are taking apart form because that form has intrinsic meaning to it, and it's like a patriarchal kind of understanding of perspective, right? So when you take apart those pieces, whether it's linear perspective or the actual canvas, the surface, the skin of that thing, whatever that thing is, that object, you start to deconstruct meaning and you start to reorganize it, and that reorganization means something else. So my research for the last, like, I don't know, 5-6 years of teaching, you know, at SFAI, you're lucky, you get to research your own classes and you propose it and either it goes or it doesn't. And so all of my research has been around these themes of deconstructing painting and what does that reorganization say. And so when you get into like crafty stuff, so sewing, handiwork, ceramics, you're totally talking about kind of like these feminist understandings of expression, right? And so this throwback, I think that paradoxically it's like this utopic dystopian that we're in right now, right? So we're having this desire for something else, but we don't know how to take it apart and reorganize it again because we're still too like static in our own identities, in our own forms. So like
And what
whenever,
do you think that something else is?
say that again.
What do you think that something else is that everyone wants?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with our own relationship with nature. And I think that man for a long time has had this kind of hierarchical understanding of us over nature, us wanting to control it, rather be in relationship, coexisting with it in a respectful manner. So, you know, I see that, and that has to do with our bodies too. You know, our bodies are these crazy, it's hard to even comprehend what goes on in our bodies. And if we are to slow down, we are to listen to what our bodies say, you know, we're a society that's filled with anxiety. We're a society that's filled with disillusionment. We're a society that's diseased. So we're not at ease or peace. And so I think that's what that is. And when we go back to the 60s, what was the message back then? You know, it's the same kind of value systems coming back, bubbling up slowly. You know, do we create a society that's inclusive and sustainable, or do we continue to like hyperdrive and be materialistic and want to dominate and be competitive with each other? So, you know, can we deflate that? Can we break that down so then it's more, I don't know, I'm going to be a hippie about it. So it's, you know, more of equal footing for everybody, including nature, including animals. So
I mean,
that, yeah.
I recently was doing some research and I found this quote of Picasso where he was talking about Bonnard's work. And he
Yeah.
literally, like, he was saying how horrible Bonnard was because he was like wishy-washy, and like his use of color and like kind of softness was like too weak for him. And he's like, no, you have to control nature and dominate it. And it was like the most capitalist patriarchal thing I've ever heard. And I mean, Picasso was a total dick. So I feel like now looking back, like he was the art patriarchy. And so it's interesting to kind of reframe him with like new context, whereas like you're just taught to like worship him up until you learn differently, you know? It's interesting.
I mean, there's different types of energy, there's different types of power, and one isn't better than the other. And I think that comes from, like that patriarchal understanding of like, let's conquer, let's divide. It's kind of colonialistic. That's where our perspectives literally, evolved through time to manifest in forms like architecture or networks of activity like grids or, painting, right? Who was in there? Not me. I wasn't in there. There's a lot of people that weren't in there contributing because they
mean
weren't
in
allowed.
the canon?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, like the colors that I use are very soft, there, and it is, a lot of the things that I'm doing are purposeful to kind of talk about, what was that show at SF MoMA? Was it Soft Power? It was all about like kind of like a hippie utopia.
Oh yeah. There was hippie modernist.
Yeah.
That could have been like a branch of it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to kind of go back to those ideals, especially aesthetically too. It's like when we look at the aesthetics of psychedelia, what is that? What is psychedelia? What are psychedelics? But a mind expanding consciousness. So like a breakdown of the reality that you thought once was. So here we are in the middle of a pandemic and the fabric of our society, all the illusions are coming to surface, whether it's the sustainability of our food or the network of what that is, or our economics, or the social justice issues that are coming, that this is proportionally affecting people who are of lower income and Black and brown bodies. I mean, these are real issues for our society to like wake the F up and to change.
And what it means to like want to break quarantine, like assuming that someone else is going to take care of it for you. Like the people who are protesting, wanting haircuts and golf season, like they're willing to risk other people's lives because they'll probably be fine. They have health care, whatever. But it's the person running the counter at the golf club, or the woman cutting your hair for like freelance,
or the bus driver, or anybody,
or the taxi driver, or the grocery store person.
Yeah, it's a privilege to stay home and work from home. It's a privilege to have a bank account,
and
it's
a privilege to go out and feel like comfortable, just like going out whenever you want to do whatever, and then go back to your little home and not worry about what you just did or who you affected.
Yeah, so it's the individualistic kind of understanding of your place in your role. So you're not a cohabiter. You're somebody who's just like,
consuming.
What they see outside of their head is what is, and it has no relationship to anything else. It's like, it's upsetting. It definitely is.
Yeah. Not to switch topics.
Yeah, let's switch
drastically, but you kind of talked a little bit about SFAI, and I wanted to ask you more because you've been there at a really huge transition point for the school, and you're also involved with the petition committee. And so I wanted to ask you kind of what it was like to find out like the school's closing in the middle of all of this, and like being a teacher there, and then also what your role is on the committee and like what you guys are hoping to achieve.
Sure. Well, I guess I have to back it up a little bit. I was an undergrad for 4 years, which was totally uncommon because back then it was mostly transfer students. But I spent all 4 years of my undergrad there. And then I've been teaching there for 6 years. So, a decade of my life has been spent within that institution. And I am very much invested in seeing it survive. And so there's that component. And then there's the other component of it kind of all imploding in a pretty upsetting way in the middle of this COVID thing. So it was like COVID's a trauma in itself, and then to add, this loss of community, but it's not even that. I was talking to Craig Calderwood in Rainbow the other day. I was like, this is a cathedral for, like, SFAI is a cathedral for individuals who are counterculture radicals. That institution has been a aesthetic, spiritual, historical, you name it, radical institution. And to not have something like that be alive and an opportunity for other people to go there and study and learn about their potential, it's extraordinarily, extraordinarily sad. And then to watch all of my students be traumatized, and all of my, all of these people that I've been, friends with, my former professors that are now my colleagues, being traumatized. They've been there for 30 years, 20 years, 40 years. They are not going to be able to afford the payments on their houses. This is, the effects of this is rather large.
Yeah.
And then it also points to, how San Francisco isn't a city for everybody anymore. It's not a place that holds diversity the way it used to. It's not a place for creativity anymore in the same way. And that's also disheartening. So where do my beloved queers go? Where do my beloved freaks go? Where do my beloved, creatives go? Where are the, like SFAI, I was trying to explain this to my partner who's not an artist, is a place, like in my class, I hold space for the kid who lights his pants on fire as a performance. And I hold space for somebody who's, trying to like channel some sort of sublime beauty,
Right.
in visual poetry. So SFAI is a container for all of that.
Yeah, I was an undergrad for 3 years. I did like 2.5. And I know for me, the reason I went there is because of the new genres department, even though I knew I would probably pursue painting more than anything else. But just having that there, and I took a bunch of classes, and like it just blew my mind. I was coming from Wisconsin and had like a pretty liberal arts, like classics, education. And so I'm like, well, what else is there? I know there's more, but I just don't know how to access it. And like, it like exploded my head. Like,
Yeah.
and I think I will always remember, we were always joking, like, is this like real or is it a new genres project? Cause people did all kinds of weird shit. And then you're like, but is it art? Maybe it's art. But yeah, that's what I loved about it. So experimental. And
Yeah, I mean, all my classes are all experimental. They're not just straightforward painting classes. So, like,
yeah,
even though I'm in the painting department, I do look at it as like a real hybrid between painting and new genres.
yeah.
I took classes from Tony Labat. I went to Cuba with Tony Labat. It
Oh,
was one
cool.
of those classes that,
What years were
yeah,
you there?
I was there from 99 to 2003.
Okay, I went there 2004 to six.
Yeah, so we just missed each other.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's interesting because at the same time, did you feel like the painting department was as interdisciplinary? Because I got the sense that it was a little bit more traditional when I was there. And then that was part of the reason why I really took to some of the new genres programming, because I felt like what I wasn't getting in painting, I could kind of pull from new genres and then fuse it on my own terms. Not
Well,
to
I
go
think,
off too far, but
yeah, I mean, I
curious
think
how
the
do you see
strength of
that?
the school was to have interdisciplinary crossover between the different departments.
Yeah.
Do I think the painting department, I think that there's each painting department, or each department is when when the people are right, everybody should have their own kind of viewpoints, and those viewpoints should be not necessarily in harmony with each other. So, like, there are people who are proponents of abstraction. There's people who are proponents of representation and figuration. I had Kristen Calabrese as a teacher there, and she's, you know, a hyper realistic painter, but also an extraordinary like mind. Like she's a brilliant person. There's, I mean, the department when I was there was very different than it is now. It's so much smaller, and that is more indicative of, you know, the change in higher education from tenured faculty to adjuncts. You know, everything. There are no more tenured track positions really anymore. Yeah, so some of the problems I think are bigger than just the institution in San Francisco. You know, it's
Yeah.
these are larger issues of sustainability, you know, that we're seeing nationwide.
Like a private art school environment.
Yeah, and also I have been reading a lot of articles about, you know, certain generations not having as many kids, so there's not as many kids going to college. And then when you pile on San Francisco rents and also tuition costs and costs of living, you know, it's not feasible. And then when you look at fine
Yeah,
arts,
I don't think it's a population issue. I think it's absolutely a cost issue. I mean, I am dealing with 6 figures of debt from SFAI and
yeah,
with no hope of forgiveness if the school does end up folding, which I find totally sick. But we don't have to go down that. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people who were kids during the recession in like 2007, 2008, like remember that even if they didn't totally understand it, and see like, do not like rely on institutions to help you, but also don't like go into debt like for this like kind of larger idea of something you're supposed to do. I think that's the whole millennial thing, right? Like don't buy the house, don't buy
yeah,
the car because you don't want to like kind of owe anyone anything because it's all going to crumble at some point.
yeah, yeah. No, they remember. I mean, also I think too, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to like wrap my head around. Um, I don't know. My mom was always just like follow what it is that makes you happy. And I made a decision at 21 to go to art school, and I applied to one school. I had been working my tail off, and I had bought a car. I sold my car. I put like 2 boxes together in a suitcase, and I fucking moved.
Yeah.
I applied by myself. No one helped me. And I drove across country in, oh, it's a crazy story, but you know, I drove across country with a pregnant woman and her dog in a stolen
What?
car,
Did you know that?
Jersey. Yeah, not at the time, but like halfway through the
That's
adventure,
awesome.
she was like, yeah, I was like, who's that on the phone? She's like, oh, my boyfriend wants his car back. I was like, well, what happened? She was like, I just took it. Anyway, it's a long story. I mean,
She
like I
was
said,
pregnant in her ex-boyfriend's car with their dog, probably driving across country.
yeah, to go visit my sister who was at an abbey in Forestville.
Wait, and that woman knew your sister?
Yeah, they were college friends.
Oh.
And I had never met my dad, and we stopped. I went and found him. I mean,
Wait,
it's
I'm
an
sorry.
epic journey.
That's like a different podcast interview.
Yeah, no, it's an epic journey. But yeah, I
Wow.
applied to one school and I got in and I just made it happen. And everything just like opened up. And then when I got there, you know, just like you, my mind was blown at the possibilities of what creativity could be
Yeah.
and who I could be in the world. Yeah, it was empowering. It was a powerful experience. And I would never take that back.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of with you. Like, I just felt like I was drawn there. Like it was this like magnetic thing that happened. And that is the only school I applied to as well because I transferred from a different school.
I have a theory.
You do? Tell me.
Well, I think that it's some sort of hotspot. I think it's some sort of like weird like vortex where you go because you have some sort of karmic connection with
Yeah.
something there or people there. And I don't know about you, but like some of
Okay.
those relationships that I have with people in that institution don't feel like they're new. Like if you're thinking in those terms of like past lives and stuff, like
Yeah.
coming back to like, fix some shit, you know, these are old karmic ties, I think.
Yeah, it was definitely a really transformative time.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. Cool. Well, so where is it? What's at? Like, what's going on? I can't even speak. Like,
It's so
where are
exciting.
things at right now? Like, what is your role on the petition committee?
Oh, well, you know, the people who have been working really hard are Ivan Iannoli, Kate Rhodes, Elizabeth Travelsley, John Priola. Am I missing?
I
There's a
saw
handful.
Lisa was on
There's
there.
there's a handful of people the adjunct community that I'm a part of. You know, everybody works very hard. And so I can't remember somebody wrote the petition, and then there was a petition committee, and so Alicia McCarthy, Ivan, and I just, you know, hit all of our networks pretty hard, and we got 1,500 signatures in, like, I don't know, not that much, maybe like a day and a half, and it didn't do anything.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that since I hadn't received any follow-up emails. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really talk about what's happening right now just because it's constantly changing, and it's constantly shocking, and it's constantly like WTF. So where I am right now is that I'm not engaging in any more of the dysfunction or toxicness that is what's happening.
Okay.
Because I can't, I mean, the board members are supposedly split. There's people who want to see the school continue, and then there's supposedly, and I say supposedly because I don't, this is all rumor. And then there's board members that have other agendas.
Okay.
And there's people that smell blood and they're circling, you know, it's like, it's not just, you know, real estate people are circling, banks are circling, other institutions. I mean, and that's all compromising activity. I mean, this is why when Ella King Tory hung herself, they talked about merging with CCA, and we didn't do it because we were like, well, it's going to hurt the integrity of the institution. We'll find a different way. And that school has always found a different way. And yeah, it's hard to pair with anything else without compromising some of those values. And those unique values are what makes the institution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just too bad it seems to go hand in hand with this like inability to make good financial decisions. I mean, I'm sorry, when I first heard about the Fort Mason campus, I was like, wow, good for you guys. Like, you must be doing really well somehow, even though I know that enrollment is going down for all schools everywhere, and especially in the Bay Area where no one can afford to be a student or an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was pretty surprised by that, I have to say.
Did you ever work in the restaurant industry?
No, like briefly, yeah, but not.
I was a server for a long time. I managed a restaurant, all different kinds of stuff. And when you have a unique restaurant, you have a unique product, you have a unique something, whatever, atmosphere, vibe, whatever it is, and it becomes popular. It has something that no one else has. And you get a population of people who respect that, and they come there and they enjoy what it is that you do. And 9 times out of 10, restaurant owners will be like, "Oh, we're doing really fucking well. Let's start another restaurant. Let's expand."
You know who hasn't done that, and that SFAI should take a note from?
Yeah.
Puerto Alegre on Valencia.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How long has that place been almost exactly the same?
I have
Great
20
menu,
years.
margaritas on point.
Yeah.
Like, I noticed like when they refresh their menu, like the lamination is new and maybe like wood paneling, but like that is what SFAI should have aspired to, is like, we are the dive bar of schools. And like, you know, we offer something no one else does, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be Yale.
Yeah, but then you have people who are in charge who are coming from a different set
Right.
of like you know, whether it's a business or you
Yeah,
know whatever other sector of society, and they don't get it. And no
they don't.
matter how many
Yeah.
times you tell them like this is what's unique about this place. This is what's so fucking special. This is what the draw is. They're
Mhm.
like, oh well, let's rebrand. Let's redo our logo. Let's spend all this money here or there. And they just it's. I remember being a student there and uh, this was like a cleanup crew. Like, I don't remember whose decision it was. They're like, yeah, let's repaint all the trash cans because there's graffiti on it. I'm like, this is a fucking urban art school. Of course there's going to be drawing on the wall. That's why kids, you know, and they're like, well, it's a hard sell to parents. Well, you know, I,
What?
why aren't you letting people do murals? Why, you know, it's like the neighbors
Yeah.
are complaining that there's, you know, the real estate property values are going down because some kid painted it on the wall outside. And it's like, oh, come on.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's not even something that would have crossed my mind, that parents would see a school with graffiti and like think it wasn't good. Interesting. Okay, well, we can move on from the SFAI black hole unless you have more.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, well, the last thing that I'll say is like, our society is so afraid of like what a deviant is.
Mhm.
But, you know, a deviant isn't somebody who's like, you know, bad. They just are questioning and going against what everybody's told them that is society or real. And if you don't have people who are questioning or asking questions, then how is anything ever going to change? It's just going to stay the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, even if it doesn't change, it's good to be kind of like aware of the construct that you're in so you can navigate it knowing that it's all kind of like this game.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, this is not totally related, but I have been recently thinking about like the idea of like the trickster.
Yeah.
Um, I had like a
What, like the
Reiki.
coyote?
Well, I had a Reiki thing happen, and she said that there was this like trickster energy like following me around. And I have some theories about why, but one of them is that I had this like little coyote figurine on this altar that I use whenever I go somewhere. I like set up an altar. So I feel like I may have accidentally like called it in or subconsciously chosen to do that. But so it got me kind of researching the idea of the trickster, and they're kind of like deviant. They're like morally kind of fluid,
Mhm.
and they're friendly.
Shapeshifters.
Say that again.
They could be shapeshifters.
Yeah, and they, you know, are basically their main function is to get you to shake out of like kind of the day to
Wake
day
up.
and yeah, wake up and open your eyes. And I feel like artist just tricks are, especially in an environment like SFAI, that is like the best possible thing that you could be. Unfortunately, that's like a hard sell to, you know, capitalists, but
Mainstream society.
yeah, corporate America. But yeah, it's an interesting idea.
It is. I mean, it's so funny you said that. I saw there's a coyote in Buena Vista Park,
Oh yeah,
and
Bernal Hill too, actually.
yeah, really shy, and you don't see him very often. But I saw him twice in one day,
Oh,
right when all of this stuff was going on,
really?
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I just got chills.
yeah. So it's so funny that you brought that up because I
Well,
do. I looked
save
up.
this. It's like an offering to the energy, and I'm gonna put it somewhere, but I don't know where yet.
I mean, coyotes are magical, but they will, you know, they'll do some. They'll really like run amok with your chickens.
Right. Gotta protect those chickens.
You know, I like coyotes. I like foxes too.
Yeah, I do too. Foxes are so cute. When I was in London, there was a bunch in the backyard, and my friend was like, "Get them out of there!" They were like raccoons to her. And I'm like, they're like the most cute, magical creatures,
They
but
are so magical. I love them so much. But yeah, I feel like SFAI has a really important role. I don't know. I've been thinking about doing more research on like counterculture, like radicalism in the US, and seeing if it's, because I feel like it's going extinct or going in hiding somehow. It's like, you know what I mean?
the speed, I remember talking about this when I first kind of learned about it through Sharon Grace, and we were kind of talking about how subcultures exist, and then fashion is one of the first thing in advertising, like co-opt all these like subculture movements, and so everything gets kind of like moved back into the cycle of like capitalism. And so I feel like because of social media and all the videos and everything, like things just move so much faster, so it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to have a subculture. I mean, for better or for worse, sometimes it's good. Like
Yeah.
if drag were always a subculture, like a lot of people would be missing out. But now it's like mainstream,
Uh-huh.
and so people can feel like the benefits of that. But yeah, I do think it kind of, if you are trying to be subversive, it's like hard to kind of stand your ground with it, because it'll just get picked up in some kind of advertising campaign, and then all of a sudden,
I know, it's really sad.
yeah, and then they'll spit you out, and then you're not cool anymore, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even want to be cool. I was just doing my thing.
Yeah, I was just doing my thing. I don't know. I still think about like when I was a kid and you liked a band and you'd like write to their like fan thing and you'd get like a zine and like a tape recorder or a tape cassette that had like, handmade art on it. And it was so like special. And then I remember when the mall got built and we went there and there was that store Hot Topic and I was like, oh God, what is this? This is awful. And I was so upset. I was so mad.
Wait,
But whatever.
because they were like taking on some of your
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but
I
then there's
know.
all the little goths out there that benefited from
I know. I know. Club culture is coming back. All these club kids, like some of
it.
my students are really into like club culture, like, appropriating like early 90s rave stuff and then taking it to the extreme. And it's actually pretty exciting. They're doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and that's where I wonder, thinking about subcultures, like maybe we just don't know how they're being passed around, like, because
Yeah.
that's not our job anymore, like we've got our thing, and then, you know,
Totally.
the
Yeah,
young folk.
we're not part of that anymore.
Exactly. I don't know if I ever really was, but that's okay.
Was in different ways. I don't
I'm a
know.
little bit of a floater. I feel like I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, well, let's see. I'm just worried we're going to run out of time, but I think we're okay because we started a little late. Um, so, is there any kind of post solo show COVID project that you're putting your energy into?
No, we're just riding the wave and to see like what's going to happen. Katrina has her viewpoints about, well, I mean, like everything's changing. So like everybody's kind of really uncertain about like how to deal with it. But we are going to do another virtual walkthrough either like May 6th or the other Wednesday. And I'll post about that. So if people want to like join and have a walkthrough, I mean, that's the cool thing about technology is,
Yes.
yeah. And then we'll kind of take it from there. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows
And you're
what's
not
happening?
like making art at home or anything?
I made a pinch pot the other day.
Oh, cool. Do you have like air dry clay, or what are you using?
No, I actually just have regular clay. I'm hoping that we get to use the kiln soon.
Yes.
I wanted to make a pinch pot a day, but it wasn't going to happen.
What are you going to do with all those pinch pots?
Put them in a
Lots of
circle.
books.
I don't know. Sell them. They're cute. They're
Yeah,
very
super
useful.
cute.
Yeah.
Very
Um,
cool.
and my pinch pots are, I don't know. They're not like they're funky enough, but they're actually, I don't know. I almost like them too much. Maybe I won't sell them.
Mm.
Maybe
I
I'll just
like
plant them.
to go back to your show, I really enjoyed how you're using your actual canvases as like a pedestal for your pots. I think that is like an interesting strategy that kind of breaks down like what's the dynamic and what function are things serving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking of like painting as a vessel, right? So if painting is a vessel, it's an object, right? It's a container, and it can. What does it contain? It contains linear perspective. It contains representational space. It can. It is space. You know, like how do we navigate that?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you put like all of those little ceramic pieces that I made that sit on top. I think of them as like little artifacts, you know. If it was a dig.
Yeah, but it also feels like it deprioritizes the painting all of a sudden. Like you kind of move from going into deep space into, oh, this is now a table, or you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it goes into like Dana Hemingway gave me a great article about like the horizontality of cloth, and it was like, you know, talking about like tablecloths being like the everyday space, and then as soon as you put it on the wall, it becomes like the sacred space of painting. And to like keep flipping flopping that is interesting. And who you know, who's in charge of, you know, the tablecloth? I don't know. Who's in charge of that horizontal space?
yeah.
Where
I
does it come
think
from?
that's a good place to leave it unless you have
Yeah.
any last.
No, 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 that's it. Yeah.
So who is in charge of the tablecloth? Just think about
I
that.
don't know. I think we all are now. I think we're all in charge.
Totally. We all get to move our own tablecloth around.
That's right. That's right. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm gonna talk to you offline, but yeah, thank you
Bye.
so much. And we will be including all your social links and everything on
Oh,
the
that's cool.
Instagram post. So,
Hey,
okay, bye.
bye.